My name is Tamary Kudita. I'm a fine art photographer based in Harare, Zimbabwe. I am a product of dual heritage. I am both South African and Zimbabwean descent. I obtained my Bachelor of Fine Art at Michaelis School of Fine Art in 2019, where I ended up majoring in photography. My photography journey started about 3 years ago at university. My degree included disciplines such as printmaking, sculpture, animation, videography, and photography. So our very first introduction to photography was a type of photography called pinhole photography. So the aesthetics produced with this kind of equipment was something that I was very fond of. From a conceptual point of view, I was intrigued with the idea of being a photographic author. There's something quite beautiful about seeing the ordinary and transforming it into something extraordinary. From a technical point of view, I was fascinated by the idea of photography, which is essentially painting with light. These are some of the qualities that drew me to photography. I am inspired by my love for textiles. I think they are rich and embedded with meaning. I'm also largely inspired by Yinka Shonibare, who is a British-Nigerian artist known for his use of textiles. He also challenges the notion of African authenticity in a globalized world through textiles. The themes I explore in my photography are based on the dualities of the world. For example, contemporary versus historical, endings versus beginnings, fantasy versus reality, modernity versus tradition. Allowing myself to reflect on these polarities allows me to create a unique visual language which pushes the boundaries in image making. My creative process has different stages, particularly 4 different stages. I like to look for inspiration in academic writings or historical references. I also look at Zimbabwean literature and the stories that are passed down generation from generation. I'm also very inspired by the everyday and what we see in our everyday contemporary lives. Once I have a storyline, I find models to work with. Luckily, the Zimbabwean community is full of warm and friendly, approachable people, so I like to look for people with timeless faces. The next stage of my creative process would be looking for locations. I like to look for locations which are hidden in the everyday and locations which have particular significance. The next step of my creative process is incredibly collaborative. I like to work with my designer who goes by Angeline Dlamini. I met her in 2019. Before I started working with her, we spoke about the African Victorian silhouette and what it would mean to introduce a Victorian silhouette within the African context. So this idea of borrowing from different cultures is something that's very repetitive in my work, and that is very intentionally done. My creative process can take about 2 to 3 months. I like to create series as opposed to creating once-off images. Post-production and digital compositing are a huge part of my process, especially if I want to inspire a nostalgic feel to my images. I think that editing brings everything together. The textiles and cultural objects of significance are sourced from local vendors within Harare. So this series pays tribute to the beautiful craftsmanship and supports the local creative economy. I love shooting both indoors and outdoors. When I'm shooting indoors in a studio, I have more control over the lighting. When I am shooting outdoors, I have more variety, so I can work with urban landscapes, domestic landscapes, and I think having variety keeps things interesting. African Victorian was inspired by one of Rembrandt's paintings titled Saskia as Flora. Rembrandt was a Dutch painter from the 1800s, so I thought about what it would mean to place an African woman within the context of mainstream art history. Deconstructing and reconstructing Rembrandt's piece was a transformative experience, and it opened up my mind to create a visual language that borrows both from Africa and the West. Birds of a Paradise was inspired by Zimbabwe. Sometimes Zimbabwe can be viewed through two different lenses, one as a tourist destination, while one is viewed by the lived realities of the people within the country. So this series pays tribute to the ordinary Zimbabweans, honoring their stories and giving them a voice through art. Through my art, I want to highlight the importance of speaking about Black narratives and documenting them. The future generation needs to know who came before them and what came before them so that they have a greater sense of identity. So I think it's a collective effort for us to document everything that we see, every book that we record, every song that we sing are all going to be used to equip them to build a better future. I would like to speak about the beauty of serendipity in my creative process. So it was in 2021 where I was exhibiting at Art Basel in Miami. It was my very first time exhibiting in front of an American audience. So I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was exhibiting my series titled African Victorian, and there was a standout piece titled Vessel, which depicts a woman with a ship on her head, and this image speaks about migration, patterns of migration, and how we got to where we are today. So there was a woman in the audience who approached me after I had given my presentation, talking to me about how she resonated with Vessel because she too was forced to move from her home and she is of Cuban heritage. So this showed me that art has such a transformative power in today's world, and it showed me that as much as Africa and the West are seen as different, we are all intertwined by the stories that connect us and how home can mean different things for different people. If I had a dream project to achieve, I would want to work with Yinka Shanibare, who is the British-Nigerian artist I mentioned earlier. I would want to create a public sculpture piece that pays tribute to both our heritages.